Alright, guys. Welcome back to the pod. Driving around town. I am in an area where my electricity, the power has been cut off by the city for some reason, maintenance related reason. I don't really know. Trying to get out of this freaking parking lot and drive back home from the beach. I was gonna go to my fave coffee shop. Couldn't find parking. Well, the free parking in the actual lot was taken, and I was like, I don't really want to pay for freaking other parking, because I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to get a seat, because usually when the parking lot is full, that means there's no seating inside the coffee shop, because it's a small spot. But usually I'm not going there like in the afternoon, like this late in the afternoon. Usually I'm going earlier on. When I go. And I'm starting to try to go more to get out and do stuff. Starting to get back to the beach almost every day. 3-4 times a week or so is the plan. Got my passport. Did the appointment, so now I just gotta get the heck out of this parking lot and try to get home. This is annoying. So the gates are closed in a lot of the area, but I see a gate open. Alright. Wow, there's only like one gate open all the way at the end. Alright, that's how we're doing it today. So yes, people, yes. I hate these stupid spiky, you know how in the parking lots they put those spikes so you can't back up? This one's on a hill. Of course, they put it like on an incline and right at the gate, at the opening by the sidewalk where there's traffic on the main street. So, goodness. That's a poor design, but okay. So, I'm tired, guys. I've been sick all these days, and then I was trying to push today. My head's just like fluff today. My head is just useless. So I'm gonna get back home. I previously ordered for my lunch yesterday. Well, last night, luckily, I ordered some food. So I've got I don't know if it's tuna or turkey, but a tuna or turkey sandwich from Sprouts, the pre-made kind, waiting at the house. And then I don't know, I might just take a freaking nap. I don't like napping, but I don't know. I got some good vitamin D in me now. I've been sitting at the beach and tested out my hotspot. So let me go this direction. Tested out my hotspot. Because I'm still rocking Google Fi for 8 more days. So I've still got this hotspot set up through Google Fi on this other phone. So at least like today it came a little bit in handy, but I honestly didn't get anything done. So cheers to that. I don't really know what to say about that, but I didn't really get a lot done, honestly. So I'm just gonna get back to the house, see if I can work on some music maybe after eating. I got about a 3.5 hour charge on my laptop on low power, so we're gonna do that. But yeah, I keep seeing on is it Instagram that a company where I've met some of the people who model for that company, friends with a little bit of them. So the company is named Dapper Boy, DAPPERBOI, boy as BOI boy. So this company Dapper Boy, if you're familiar with it, they make kind of clothing for all genders for the most part. They take into account, shoulders, waist, hips, bust, all these types of things, and they create clothing that has a comfortable fit for pretty much everybody. Like, it's a very, I would call it a neutral kind of gender look. A little more towards mask, I would say, because the reason why I say a little towards mask is because they don't really have like a lot of femme styles, but it's mask in a way that's like kind of like casual and maybe like workwear, like stuff you could wear to work that's kind of like a dressy-ish casual. Like, you would usually be able to wear it to work, but it's not like business suits necessarily, but it's like more, you could wear it out at night. You could probably get into a club wearing it. It's probably not going to be outside of most dress codes. Maybe not as formal as like a wedding, but you could still kind of mess with some of the clothing options and probably pull something out of yourself to make that work if need be. But check it out. I mean, you can check out the styles. I would say I'm not fully up to date on all the styles. I just know of it because it's popular in San Diego, and a friend of mine, has done work for that company, and that friend has kind of somewhat like introduced me to some other friends that they have. Like, I've seen them around, but I wouldn't say that we're all friends. I'd say I'm friends with one of the people that they interact with, and then otherwise I'm not friends with like everybody, if that makes sense. Not that I'm against them, like, we're not enemies. It's just we're acquainted. Like, we've seen each other. They probably don't know my name. We don't have each other's numbers or contact information. If I even wanted to hang out with them, I wouldn't even know how to get in touch. So that's why I say, like, we're not friends. Like, I wouldn't say we're friends. We've had friendly interactions, but are they a friend to me? No. Would they identify me as, like, a friend, or if they needed something, would they call me? No. But, if they needed something, if they were, like, out and I was like, hey, I recognize that person, they have a flat tire or whatever, I'd help them, like, but it's kind of like, not even, I wouldn't even say acquaintance. Like, it's just like the city's small, the queer community's kind of small, you kind of run into the same people, and when you see people kind of online and you see their faces a lot, because I'm on their social media, and so I see their posts often, so like I'm familiar with the brand and familiar with stuff that they do. So basically they keep posting about Shark Tank. So I'm not sure, I'm going to check it out, but I'm not sure if they either have Shark Tank, like they have, they're on an episode already, or if they were on one, or something like that. I'm trying to get a better understanding for that, because I'm really not 100% sure what's going on that end. But something about that clothing brand is connected to Shark Tank. So either they got or are in the process of trying to get some kind of funding. But yeah, like, check out the company if you haven't already. Like, they've got some cool clothing. Friends of mine say that it's a little high priced. And I think if you were to buy, like, I would agree. Like, if you were to buy all of your clothing from them, I feel like it's a high price, in my opinion, because I'm cheap. So it's not like super cheap clothing, but it's not like Louis Vuitton or like, Nike, or like, it's not some brand, like some brands that are like super high priced. Like, it's affordable, but some people might have to like save up for it a little bit. It might not meet most people's budgets, considering that so many people nowadays are like kind of like limited on their budget and everything. With the economy as it is and all. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure things out for my day. Like, our area has no power. I think I mentioned before that I found a $100 bill on the ground. And that was when I was leaving San Diego Monday, I think March 27th or so. So when I was leaving San Diego that day, I found $100 on the ground, which was cool. But I still wasn't sure if it was real because I never took it to the bank or anything. And then I've been sick all these days, so I really haven't done much outside of the house, in all honesty. Today's the first day I've been out since last Sunday, and it's Thursday. And yeah, I was definitely getting on the restless side of life, feeling kind of restless. But yeah, I'm hungry. But that's probably the main thing I'd have to say. But yeah, just that's my update. Like, I don't have too much updates just because I've been sick and, trying to conserve energy, trying to, manage my energy as best I can and not get too tied down. But yeah, today's gonna be a big planning type day for me. So like I've been mentioning, I do kind of want to go through some of the political related types of policies and such. Things impacting LGBTQ plus community. There's all these different laws and things going on. I mean, the latest thing I saw was a text from Riches, because I'm on their text list. I don't even know what it said. Let me see if I can find it. It was a few days ago, but I was like, I'm in LA, I'm not going anyways to this event. So it was from Tuesday of this week. It was at 1:58 p.m. I got a text saying that Thursday, April 6th, which is today, at Riches in San Diego from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. There's an event called Drag is Not a Crime. It's a drag show fundraiser, no cover, 100% of tips and bar proceeds benefit what's called Tennessee Queens out of work. So I'm not sure what's going on, honestly. It sounds to me like, let me see if I can do a quick Google search. It sounds to me like Tennessee is having some issues here. Tennessee Queens out of work. Let me see. Okay, so it looks like according to the Washington Post, on April 3rd, there's this article. Oh my goodness. I hate how they have all these things that you have to like sign up and. No, I don't want to subscribe to anything. Just will you leave me alone? How do I close this window? Read more when you register. Create a free account or log in to continue. I thought I did this already. Subscribe for unlimited access. Jeez, I gotta like put my email. I'm trying not to put my email address on anything because I'm getting so much spam email. It's just impossible. Alright. I just want to read this stupid article. So basically, it basically says, for this article, Tennessee drag queens feared it was their final hour and gave it their all. Hours before new state law was set to take effect, an enthusiastic crowd turns out to support their queens. So this is April 3rd at 5 a.m. of 2023. Jesus Rodriguez did this post. It has a picture of, it says, Dee Dee Blue Heart performs during a drag event at East Tennessee State University on Friday, hours before a state law was scheduled to go into effect, restricting locations where such performances could take place. So I don't know what they mean by restriction, and when they say supposed to take place, I don't know if it actually took place. So again, I'm behind. I don't really follow most news. It stresses me out, and I'm kind of limiting myself lately from a lot of things. And so basically, let me see. I'm trying to get to. It says drag shows on public property were supposed to become illegal. A law enacted by the Republican-controlled legislature bans male or female impersonators from performing adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors anywhere it could be viewed by a person who is not an adult. So I don't understand why they're so heavily pushing this minors. Okay, that to me is a little odd. So a public event where it can be viewed by minors. And so, I mean, most of my experiences with drag shows have been in clubs and bars. So I've never been in a space where there's really been a lot of minors. I could say, no, I haven't, actually. Because everywhere I go, you need to be at least 18 or 21 to get in. And so I've never been in a space, like, I'd say the only place that I've been to, like, there are places like Lestat's and Baja Betty's in San Diego where they're not, they're just like restaurants, like coffee shop, like bar and grill type places where, you can go with your family and stuff, but I've never seen drag events at those spots. I'm not saying they've never hosted them, I don't know. So for a drag event to be banned so minors can't view it, I would say I understand the part about sexually explicit. That's the one phrase that I kind of understand. Just looking big picture, I can see why someone would want to avoid minors being, exposed to sexually explicit behaviors, but also, I mean, if they're on TV, if they're on social media, I'm pretty sure they've seen those types of acts. I'm not saying, I'm not arguing, like, I don't have kids, so I don't really know what I would think about that specifically. But just on that note, I would say, a lot of people, a lot of places have like, for the most part where I've lived, anything where you're gonna see drag performances, unless it's like a pride event or something, usually it's at bars and clubs. Usually you're gonna have to get carded anyways. And for someone to say events where there are male or female impersonators, so it's one or the other, so, or both. So I can understand maybe the part about sexually explicit, because it's like, okay, it's almost like a minor can't go to a rated R movie without an adult, accompanied by an adult. So I don't know if they get into that, because if I feel like if someone wants to bring their kid to a drag show, that's a whole different thing. If it's your parent or guardian bringing you to a drag show, that's a whole different situation, I feel. But if they do say something about there not being an adult present, like, for the kid or children, and permission to go, then I mean, I would almost say it's similar to a rated R movie. That's the only thing I could say would be like, okay, if they're treating it like a rated R movie and just trying to put some kind of restriction on the, sexual explicit things, because it's not all sexually explicit. I mean, there's dancing, but you could say things like, like waist thrusting, and sometimes people taking off certain clothing items, or certain sexual, like, lap dance type of activities and things like that. Like, I would say maybe that's about as far as it goes as far as sexually explicit. And then probably, like, verbally, a lot of the stuff that is being said, there's a lot of sass and a lot of, like, just kind of like this persona that a lot of the queens kind of take on, queens and kings, take on with, like, verbal, like, expression of, there might be profanity, there's kind of, like, lewd jokes, sexual innuendo, things like that. Part of me can kind of see how that, could be treated like, okay, let's treat it like a rated R movie kind of scenario. Or, anything that you would say, is not for minors. Usually if you're accompanied by an adult or something like that, I would say that would almost demonstrate a form of even playing field. Now, I haven't read too much into these articles or anything. I just literally am reading this cold, like, right as I'm recording, right? So I'm not very well educated on this yet. I mean, I plan to delve into it, but, what I'm thinking is, once they start taking it past that level of maybe like a rated R film type of category, if they have some other explanation on the side of the sexually explicit activities, I would call that discrimination and prejudice, right? Because they're singling people out specifically based on those two things, not just the sexual stuff, but the impersonating of a male or female. Like, why is it illegal to impersonate a male or female? Why is it illegal? How can that be illegal? Like, performing, impersonating as a male or a female. That is considered illegal. Because the way I'm reading this, I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trained in any legal way. But the quotes I'm saying, it says, male or female impersonators from performing adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors. So what do they mean about, when they say adult-oriented performances? Is it the stuff that I mentioned, that I listed? The stuff that I talked about in just basically in what I was saying with the explicit, the types of explicit things that I've seen in drag shows. And I've been to a lot of drag shows. I can't even count. It's more than 20, more than 30. Like, I've been to a lot. Like I've been to, like, I don't know how many weekend brunches, almost every single weekend or every other weekend or so, brunches with drag. And other nighttime events with drag. And I've never had a problem with it. But I'm also pretty open-minded about stuff. And I feel like what they do isn't any more than what you would see on a music video. A typical music video, R&B, pop, hip-hop, video with like dancers in the background that maybe have a little skin showing or some body parts jiggling around and stuff, or like that music video WAP, we all, those of us who like that video, shout out, but I feel like it's not more explicit than those types of things, in my opinion. Like, it's not stripping, it's not strippers, it's not lap dances necessarily. Like, I've been in the front of I've been on the floor of like a drag show where it was all floor seating. And I remember being in this kind of awkward seat where, there were seats all around, right? There were seats kind of like almost kind of fanned out, like stadium style seating, but like fanned out, so everyone was mostly facing one direction, but there was like a single line of tables along the back perimeter. So the dancers were coming out, like the drag queens were coming out from behind me. There was like a platform up behind me. They were coming out and onto the middle of the dance floor that was like our table. There was like a table next to us on the left, a table on the right, but all the other tables were facing towards us, facing the dancers. Like, there were like multiple rows of tables facing towards my direction, and we only had one single row of like a few of us. And so there were small little round tables. Each table in our section had like 2 chairs, but we had a group of 3, so I had asked one of the hosts, can we add a chair to that table, because my friend was waiting for me, and one friend was at the door. These 2 friends didn't know each other. One friend was at the door waiting for me, so I roll up in my Uber and I see my friend, and then the other friend is inside texting me like, hey, I got us a table, but she only got a table with 2 seats, which is fine, because it was pre-packed, and so they allowed us to add an extra seat. And so the best I can explain my seat is like, I wasn't up against the back of the platform. I was basically the 3rd chair. So the back of the table was pushed up against the platform. My friends, one was sitting to the left side of the platform at the table. Thank you, motorcycles. The other one was sitting to the right of the platform at the table, and I was sitting with my back towards the platform. So it went basically the crowd that was looking my direction, the stage, like the dance floor where the dancers were actually doing their performances, me, because I was a little bit sticking out into the dance floor because I was sitting in front of the table. I had my chair turned toward the dance floor, so I was facing all the other people that were facing me, and then my friends were on the left and right of me, but kind of pushed back towards the platform. So I was basically sticking out in the middle, the table behind me, the platform behind the table, and they were coming down the stage of that platform, down the stairs, and onto the dance floor. And then I was like the center of attention because I was literally in the freaking dance floor. So there I was, getting every single dancer's attention. Like every single dancer that came out was like doing a routine, and I felt like it was almost like a show that was like portions of it they were paying attention to me. And my friends were like, "Oh, I wish I had your seat. Like next time, remind me to get your seat," because like they were like, I was getting a lot of attention. Like every single performer was like right where I was and coming up near where I was, and like dancing right in front of me, and like if they had a scarf, like putting it around my neck and all kinds of little things. But I think of all the times I could have potentially been in the line of experiencing some very sexually explicit routine, I would say it wasn't anything that made me uncomfortable. I'd say the least comfortable I was, which still wasn't very uncomfortable, but there's a drag queen up on the platform. So that platform was maybe like a foot above our table. And the rules were stay seated. You're not supposed to get up and walk around. Because this was like during the Rona too. This was like this was like 2021 or so. And so I'm sitting here, I'm getting the attention, and there's the host, it's emceeing, and so the host drag queen is up there on the platform. So when there's no performances on the actual dance floor, on the floor where the table was, I would turn my seat around and look up at the platform at the MC drag queen, and they would say things, they would start talking and stuff. And I remember I took some cash out and I put it in her, I think her boot, or like a sock, or like something that was low, because the rule was you can't really stand up. And I was like, well, I don't want to like have them yell at me, because they're sassy. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be breaking the rules. And so I didn't want to like stand up and give it to them, like how they have like in their bra strap or whatever. And the drag queen was kind of like calling me out and just like, hey, like, have you ever been to a strip club before? I was like, and they're like, well, they're just like, honey, like treat it like a strip club kind of thing, or like whatever they kind of said. And like, they kind of like lowered like their cleavage looking area and just were kind of like signaling like put the dollar bills in the air, and I was like, all right, so I stood up and did it. But the reason why I put it lower was because they were up on a platform and I was sitting down, so it's like their leg was like a foot above where I was sitting, but I couldn't reach anything else. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to reach to give them any money if I can't stand up, like, so I was just like, okay. But, and so, like, yeah, and I'm not used to being the center of attention in any form. Like, I'm a pretty shy person, and, I was kind of like, all right, I'm a little on the spot with that question about the strip club. But other than that, I was like, I understand where they're coming from with that, and it wasn't like they weren't trying to be rude. They were just kind of like, it was more of like an inviting kind of thing. And I wasn't uncomfortable with it, and all the people dancing around me and stuff, I wasn't uncomfortable with that either. It wasn't expected. None of that was expected. Like, I would have preferred to like blend into the back somewhere and just watch from afar, but instead I was like right in the middle of the freaking dance floor. So I was like, cool. That's probably never gonna happen again, in all honesty. Like, usually you don't get an experience like that. But it was fun. Shout out to where was I? Executive Suites. So yeah. But that's kind of all I kind of had in mind. I don't know, like, but yeah, thinking about these different people, these different situations, these different settings, just kind of having it all in perspective, I'm like, I'm pretty shocked that it's going to this level, that it's getting to this level, that people are like freaking out as much as they are about it, because I personally feel like it's not a big deal. Like, I feel like drag shows aren't really like something to cancel, you know. I just think maybe if they're gonna have a drag show, they need to card people. Like, I don't see why it's such a hard thing. Like, if you don't want kids going, then card people to get to shows. Like, I don't see why they need to make it illegal for the performances to have that space. I think they need to maybe up the security on the secure end, and if they're really trying to protect the youth or whatever the heck it is that they're saying, they need to treat it like they would any other event where you don't want a kid going in. Just check for IDs. How hard is it? You do it for everything. You do it for rated R movies. You do it for bars. You do it for clubs. You can't do it for a drag show. Drag show starts at 7. We're going to start carding at 6:30. Or you have to, leave or whatever. I don't know. But I feel like that should be on security. That should be on the door. That shouldn't be on the drag queens and people impersonating different genders. That to me is where I worry, though, is the impersonating of genders, because they can take that to a level that's like really far. So say, for example, myself, if I'm dressed in clothes that aren't from a women's section right now, I'm wearing some Adidas that I don't even know if they're male or female Adidas. I have no freaking clue. Got some socks my sister gave me. They're bright orange and dark orange with one of those poison X skeletons on it. I've got some tactical cargo pants on. I'm actually wearing pants and not shorts. I really would rather be wearing shorts, but I'm wearing pants. I'm gonna fix that once I get in the freaking house. I'm gonna be putting these pants away for a while. I'm wearing an O'Neill kind of vintage cut tee, vintage looking tee. I'm wearing a sports watch, bracelet. It's a leather bracelet. I'm wearing a baseball cap, Dodgers, but it's like green, neon green on dark green. Would I be considered impersonating anybody? I mean, and how do you tell if somebody's impersonating a male or a female? Like, where do you draw the line? Is it just the clothes that they wear? Is it that they look like somebody? If I go and take my guitar down to the pier and start playing my guitar, just because I'm dressed in clothing that's maybe more mask presenting, and I start singing gay music, if I start doing like Lil Nas X covers, you know, and singing like some covers by um, what's her face? She has this album called Pride. What's her name? Danny Max. Danny Max. I start singing Lil Nas X and Danny Max covers, and start singing, you know, covers of WAP, which are sexually explicit, you know, but I'm not dressed in female clothing. Can I get arrested if I do that in Tennessee? I mean, maybe there's no pier in Tennessee, I don't know. But, you know, because thankfully in LA this isn't an illegal situation, but if I go somewhere like that, would I get arrested just because I don't look clearly like one gender or the other and I happen to have some sexual things coming out of my mouth while I'm playing an instrument? Because that's a performance in a public area, where minors could pass me. And, you know, so that's where I start thinking, this could expand into other performances. Having people have to decide, you know, what am I going to wear, you know? You know, are people able to wear their comfortable clothing, or not, you know? Are they able to wear, you know, their preferred attire, regardless which section of the aisle you get your clothing from? Can you get arrested just for quote unquote performing? I mean, I feel like that kind of thing is, you know, if it gets worse, there might be a lot of targeted, you know, arrests. But I feel like that's kind of more what they're aiming at. Isn't necessarily protecting kids, protecting minors from being exposed to like sexual things. I feel like they're trying to silence and take away empowerment and, you know, be prejudiced against people who don't conform to gender norms, which I don't understand how that is freedom of speech. I should be able to wear whatever the heck I want to wear when I walk out the door, you know? I mean, I'm not saying, like, maybe if I have my nipples out and ass chaps, you know, that's maybe different. But, you know, if I'm just wearing shorts and a t-shirt or pants and a t-shirt or a sweater or whatever, you know, a skirt or a tie or whatever, like, I don't see why that's problematic. If that's what I choose to spend my money on and I'm a tax-paying American citizen, why shouldn't I be able to dress however I want to dress and perform out in public and do what I want to do if I'm not being like a nuisance to society? You know, but yeah, it's pretty hard to hear, and I think the reason why I kind of avoid a lot of these kind of topics is because they do kind of affect me in a lot of ways, even though it's not like on the dot. Maybe, you know, I am kind of affected just because I'm a person that doesn't really follow the status quo. I don't really dress like people need me to dress a lot of the time. I do what makes me comfortable, and I'm not trying to make anyone else uncomfortable. But that's kind of what I have to say on that note. I don't want my phone to die. It's at about 33%. We don't have any power in the house, so I'm gonna try to conserve my battery. I'm on low energy, guys. I haven't really eaten lunch yet. It's after 2 p.m. So I gotta eat. I ate breakfast around, I don't know, 8:45 or so. So I'm kind of low on energy, low on calories. So I'm gonna eat a little and then get on with my day. Maybe do some yoga. Once the power turns back on, see if I feel like doing laundry. I don't want to push too much. I might not do all that today. I might wait till another day. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my first pass looking at some of these topics. Maybe I'm not looking at it too accurately because obviously I haven't read the whole story, but I'm a little familiar with the stories because a friend has filled me in a lot too, and I did read a little bit about this type of topic beforehand, and I think I did post a recording about it beforehand, but I don't think this is the same exact thing because it's legislature or legislation. I don't know the term, but anyways, legislation. It's legislation. And before it wasn't like any legal kind of law that would result in arrest or citations or anything along those lines. It was just kind of like a topic. And I mean, I don't know. I kind of am a little like, I'm not saying everybody needs to be like openly into gay stuff, but to me it's just strange when people are so weirded out by it because my life is very involved around a lot of queer people and queer topics and queer stuff. And so I don't know, man. Like, sometimes there's no real way to really say is this right, is this wrong, but I mean, if you're a really conservative person and you don't like your kid around sexual type of topics, I would be curious to see what types of topics the same people complaining about drag shows are allowing their kids to do online and online or in some other entertainment areas and media. Like, what are they actually allowing their kids to see? Is it just the fact that it's queer? Is that the problem? Because I feel like that's what the problem is people hold queer related topics to a different standard, which is strange to me. I mean, like, I've had the weirdest experiences. Like, I remember once, I've talked about it before, and like, I'm not saying that I was in the right or this other person was in the wrong, but it was something that kind of took me aback. I had a friend that was leaving from work, like leaving the company one day. Really close friend, This friend is a straight person. Out in public, they were always trying to like take my arm, hold my hand. They were physically often just like putting their arm around my shoulder, initiating hugs, things like that. Like, they're always doing this. Whenever we said hello or goodbye, it was hugs, and they were always initiating it. And this one day at work, it's one day, and I thought they were leaving at the moment I did this. And I see them coming out of the admin office, and I'm like, oh, like, bye, And so I kind of give them like a shoulder hug, like a one-sided kind of like shoulder kind of hug, and they're like, you shouldn't do that. This is a workspace, and to do it in public, and like, that's like weird, and I'm just kind of like, what? Like, okay. And I was kind of like, is it weird? Because I'm like, you do a lot of hugging all the time, at work, outside of work, everywhere. I never thought much of it until they mentioned it, and I was like, why is this awkward for them? And I'm not saying that I should have the right to go around hugging people who don't want me hugging them, but I'm just saying, this person has never once asked me if I want them hugging me or touching me in any way or holding my hand or whatever. They've never once asked me how I feel about it or what I think or whatever. And for some reason, it was an awkward moment for them. And then, I was like, sorry, I'm sorry. Like, I felt bad. I was like, shit. Like, because I would never like do something to somebody that they don't want me to do. But to me, it was not clear that they didn't want me to do this, and I literally thought they were on their way. Like this was their last second leaving the building, and I was like, I don't want to like not say goodbye to my friend who's leaving. And so I was like, okay, so maybe I fucked that up, you know. They weren't leaving at that moment either, and they go back to their desk. They're like doing all the stuff around the office and stuff. And then they start formally saying their goodbyes, and they're like, okay, now we can hug. And I'm just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, because to me, I was like, okay, like, first you're saying this is awkward because you're doing this around people, and we're in public, this is work. And then still, you initiate a hug before you leave in public at work while we're around people, you know. And I'm just kind of like, okay, what's the difference between me hugging you when I think you're leaving and you hugging me when you are leaving? Like, to me, I'm like, it's the same people we were around, it's the same place, same thing. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, like, they were kind of saying things, and I'm like, I don't know, like, I really don't know what to think about it. Like, I was offended and confused, but I'm like, there's stuff like that where I'm kind of like, is it because I'm not a straight person that they don't want me hugging them in front of people with me initiating it and not them initiating it because I'm not straight? Is that what this was? Like, I don't really know. It's hard to really know. And it's hard to really know when you have situations like that where there's, you know, people kind of giving mixed messages. And I'm not saying, like, okay, I should have the right to, like, do whatever just because, you know, I think at any time, if somebody wants to call the shots and be like, don't do this or don't do that, it's perfectly acceptable. But to me, I'm like, well, this isn't clear. This is very much not clear as to why this is happening, why they were taking offense to it. And then, you know, within minutes, they were okay hugging everybody. So I'm just kind of like, I don't understand what that was all about. And this is a person who's often, you know, asking me a bunch of questions about my sex life and all kinds of sexuality questions and all sorts of questions all the time, you know. And I'm just kind of like, what? Like, to me, that wasn't like a sexual thing. I was just kind of like, I'm literally hugging you in like a professional, friendly way, like, because you're leaving. And so, I don't know. Like, I don't understand it. I never will understand it. I never brought it back up. I was just kind of like, whatever. Because I knew they were going to get defensive about it. And I know that they kind of have some other confusions going on with themselves. And I kind of been like, okay, whatever. Like, but it's that kind of stuff. That it's like, if that was a different person, if that wasn't my friend, if that was like a boss or somebody else, you know, who could, or somebody who could take it to the boss and just be like, oh, this person did this or that, you know, inappropriately. And it's like, okay, why am I held to a different standard when I feel like I go above and beyond? I have a whole other higher standard where I'm like, well, you know, I try not to have like bra straps showing or underwear showing or any other kind of thing where somebody's gonna like assume that I have some other weird intention just because I'm not a straight person. And, you know, I've worked with plenty of women who walk around in skimpy little outfits all over the office. And I'm not one of them, you know. And luckily the places I've worked, my dress code has never really been called into question. But I wonder about that kind of stuff. I'm like, it's very easy for a dress code to be called into question. I've heard people talk about it where they're like, well, why aren't you wearing blouses? And it's like, well, I'm wearing polo shirts and button downs. Like, why do I need to wear a blouse? You know? Or like, why aren't you wearing like pantyhose or whatever? It's like, you know, they want you to dress like a certain feminine way where it's like, I don't understand why, you know. It's like I'm wearing like a tux and a top hat. I'm not like wearing some weird outfit that's like really a little drawing attention or anything. And you know, there's no real problem with it. But I feel like this type of attack on drag performances is almost that same type of idea of like straight people can get away with doing certain things, and when you're not a straight person, either genderqueer or you're of a queer sexuality, you know, you can't do the same stuff because people sexualize everything. They sexualize everything you do. You know, if I bend over and pick up a pen, you know, is somebody gonna say that I was doing some kind of weird behavior? It's like, dude, I dropped my freaking pen. You know what I mean? What does it mean to the other person? How are they interpreting it? And a lot of times I don't even like telling people anything about my sexuality because then they start thinking about everything from a sexual perspective. Like, oh, I called you, so that means that I'm trying to like have a date with you now. That's what that means. If you're a woman and I call you, that means that I'm interested. If you're a woman and I text you, that means that I'm flirting with you. If you're a woman and I compliment you, I don't even compliment people, in all honesty. I just avoid complimenting people because I don't want them to think it's some sexual thing. There's a lot of things that I avoid doing just because I don't want someone to take it wrong. And I kind of feel like maybe that's what's happening with all these drag things, is like people aren't people aren't understanding it for what it is because they're too concerned about the sexual stuff, you know, and they're taking it in some sexual context, and they're like, look, there's something sexual happening. Look, they're rolling on the floor, like, you know, licking their lips or whatever, and it's like, so, like, have you seen Madonna's music videos? I mean, like, well, older videos and stuff, but I mean, there's stuff like that that's like, okay, so how come that's okay, but then watching this is not okay? You know, it's like, there's certain things where it's like, you know, like the standards aren't equal, and that's where I start having a problem, is where it's not equal. Like, I can understand, okay, maybe people don't understand the culture, or they aren't into it, or they think it's gross, or whatever, but if it's no longer equal and there's different groups getting discriminated against because of that, like, what if you're not impersonating any other gender? What if you're not impersonating a gender? You know, what if you're not... So does that mean that all performances that have sexual or adult... It didn't really say sexual, I'm assuming sexual, and I keep saying sexual, but they say adult content, which I don't know what that is defined as. But if it's defined as what I said, like verbally, and then like the dances, like the stuff that you hear the drag queen say, and then the dances, and maybe like the lyrics to some of their songs or whatever. Because this is pop music they're singing to. They're not like making up songs too much, like RuPaul, yeah, but I mean, like, usually they're not having like individual albums and stuff. Like, usually it's like they're lip syncing to other songs that are already out, and maybe even mimicking some of the dance moves that are already out by the actual artists that aren't queer artists most of the time. And so how come the non-queer artists can perform it? It's like, okay, so is it only I feel like it's only the impersonating of the gender that's the issue here. Because if you take other things like concerts, for example, where there's people performing and talking about adult content on the stage, and there's kids in the audiences. I mean, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, I mean, yeah, they're old now, but I mean, like, back when I was younger, you know, they were younger too, and, you know, their content isn't, like, pure, like, non-adult in any way. Like, almost every single pop singer is sexualized, you know, and so it makes me curious, and I wonder, you know, where are they coming at with some of these angles, because I have the suspicion that it's coming from a prejudice place, misunderstanding and over sexualization of queer people. When queer people are looked at in society, the first thing people think of is like, they think a lot about sex when they see them. Like when I walk around town, I'm not just like thinking about sex all day. When I see somebody, I'm not just like, oh, sex, like that's not really the first thing on my mind. I mean, if it is for people, that's good for you. If that's how you think all day, like that's fine. But I think there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm very aware of when I'm in a flirty mood or when I'm in a playful mood or whatever, and I think a lot of times people don't see queer people outside of the sexual stuff, which is, I think, why, I've had straight friends that are so interested in my sex life or in my preferences sexually and all kinds of things. Like I'd say most of my friends are very great. I'd say I have one, maybe two that are like a little off the rails that, every now and then I've had to rein in and be like, yo, this is not appropriate. Like, just because you're curious about this, like, Google it. Like, why do you need to know if I'm a top or a bottom? Why do you need to know, like, who I slept with and how and when and, why do you need to know all these details? It's like when I sit with you with your straight friends or your straight coworkers, you're not asking them about that stuff. You're only asking me. And it's not appropriate. It's not okay. Like, I'd understand if they were doing it to everybody. It's like, wow, this is just a horny, freaky person that just wants all the details about everybody's life. But I mean, I've had other friends mention that they don't like certain friends, a certain friend or two, and I think that's the reason why, was because whenever they were around them, they were talking in this weird sexually explicit way. They're all up involved in everybody's relationship details. It's just very inappropriate. Now, I'm not saying like people need to be prudes and like never ask, but it's like I've had friends that didn't know my type or didn't know a lot of my preferences until later on. Like once we actually started hanging out and we like get to know each other, and then we start talking about our dating lives and all kinds of stuff, and then we're like, oh, like then they asked me. I'm like, cool. But it's like, if you barely know my name and you're like asking me all kinds of stuff and you're not even interested in me, then it's like, what the heck is that coming from? But yeah, that's kind of how I see it, is like, this seems to me to be coming from a different place. It doesn't seem to be like, I feel like a lot of times people want to take an idea and they're like, oh, let's blame it on this. Let's blame it on this one thing. They're spinning it to throw in like minors and children, and they're spinning that idea. They're using that to kind of hook people into this idea that what they're doing is okay. Because once you start mentioning minors, it's like, oh, now I see. It's almost like the reverse happened with like slavery. It's like you see all these minority groups, and the general public was taught, they're not as worthy of human as us other Caucasian people are. We're not. The other darker skinned individuals or minority group individuals are savages. That was a term that still gets thrown around. Savages. They don't feel the same as we do. They're heathens. They're evil. And using all these types of terminology to kind of sway, like, oh, we can do these things to them because they're less than, because they're worse than, And it's kind of like almost like saying the same thing with queer groups. It's like, well, we can do these things to them because they're perverting the minors. And it's like, no, all media is that way. All of it is that way. All of it is adult content. All of it, for the most part, unless you're watching like children's shows. Like, almost all of it has adult content to it. Most mainstream media is adult content. A lot of it is. Like, we're in a culture where we don't think about it. But I think when it hit me the most was when I first started watching K-pop videos, right? Especially like the hip hop style type, like with the rapping and stuff. And I was like, sometimes I would hang out a lot at like Korean spots, like Korean barbecues, boba spots, like different Asian and Korean types of restaurants, bars, whatever, and come across a lot of like K-pop and stuff. And I'd go out for soju with friends and we'd have drinks. And I was definitely exposed to a lot of K-pop, And the one thing that I noticed that was different with with the guys, for example, I would watch them dancing and I would be like, why is it so clean? Like back, and this was a while ago. Like I know that it's changed. It has become more adult. But most of it was very like, I mean, I know that even in Asian culture, a lot of the culture, sometimes, not all of it, but a lot of the mainstream media, that they'll have the short skirts and the young look and all that kind of stuff, and like almost infantile sexualizing like Asian women. That happens a lot with Asian women. I mean, I'm not here to like put a label on it of like good or bad. I'm just saying like that happens a lot. Like every gender, every sexuality, every ethnicity has their own thing that is like put on them. And with queer people, what gets put on them is the over sexualized identity. Like people know that about you, and then all they think about is sex when they see you. They think about what's your sex life? What are you thinking about when you come over to me and talk to me? Is it in a sexual way? Are you assuming something sexual? And it's like, no. Like most of us know better. Like, like I'm a black person. There's certain stuff that I know in certain neighborhoods or anywhere. You go into certain places, you don't put your hands in your pockets, you don't act like you're in some dark corner over by yourself, like putting your hands in and out of your pockets and stuff. Like you don't want people thinking you're stealing stuff. You're you know, just trying to do what you need to do and, not draw attention to yourself or have somebody assume something about you. Like, I know what I look like, and when I walk around at night, sometimes I might be perceived as male, as a black male, and I've definitely gotten reactions where, people don't hear my voice. They treat me like they think I'm a black male. And then they hear my voice and they're like, oh, you're a woman. And then they kind of ease up a little bit because they're like, oh, they probably thought I was going to rob them. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, my car is right here next to yours. I'm just getting in my damn car. Like, you don't have to clutch your purse or, like, put your panic button on or whatever the fuck. It's like people put stuff on everybody, And so kind of what I see when it comes to these types of topics is like, yeah, you're kind of making an excuse. Just like slave owners and slave traders made an excuse for doing what they were doing against different people, they made those excuses because they're like, oh, they're savages, oh, they're heathens, like whatever, and if there's an excuse that, oh, this culture is creating some perverse environment for minors, like I would actually encourage people to watch their music videos aren't really like the most popular things, but watch the top 20 chart music videos and pop. Watch the way they dance, listen to the lyrics, read the words, listen to the top like 10, 20 club hits. Listen to the words, listen to the lyrics, watch the dancing in the videos, and then watch drag show footage and see, is it more sexual, what you're hearing and seeing? Is it more sexual than what you see in the mainstream? I guarantee it is not more sexual. It is the same. It is exactly the same sexual. But because it's queer people and other people have not really seen this a lot, who aren't part of the culture, and now that there's kids going and posting on social media and all these kind of, the slang, a lot of drag slang comes from, African American culture and African American queer culture, queer people of color culture. is the slang often is used in drag culture, and you see a lot of Caucasian and others using this slang, minors included, like children using the slang, and it's like, okay, you're actually saying things like slay, you know? It's like, okay, like, it's fine, but I'm like, you know, we don't stay hidden forever, you know? It's just another minority group, and people are scared, and that's what it is. They're like, I don't know what this is. I don't want to teach my kids anything. So because I don't want to teach my children, because it's too hard for me to wrap my head around something that's been going on forever, mind you. I mean, most people don't read history a lot more than what they're taught in school, but when you go and actually read history before the Christian and Islam and Judaism and all these types of things, mostly Christianity and Islam, before they started trying to take over all these other nations, all these other nations' ideas of sexuality were different. I mean, study samurai culture. Study samurai culture in Japan. You know, samurai had male servants of a form. Study multiple different kinds of Greek culture. You know, study a lot of different cultures. You know, sexuality wasn't really stifled, and a lot of the even, you know, questioning or, you know, blurred lines between gender identity and expression and, you know, sexual activities and things between males, females, males with males, females with females, whatever, whoever with whoever. A lot of cultures didn't really have an idea about, oh, we shouldn't do this, until Christianity came along and was like, don't do this because we'll kill you, kind of thing. You know, the Bible says, the Quran says, and now it's so deep seated in so many cultures. A lot of these indigenous roots and original cultures have, the sexuality has been lost. You know, the sexuality in the culture has been lost. It's been like rewritten in ways that makes it seem like everybody was always straight. And now, you know, at some point in time, we were told only 1% of the population is queer, which we all, I don't know about your lives, but in my life, it is definitely more than 1%. I would say probably 30%, like, is somewhere on a spectrum of gender and or sexuality, kind of queerness on some occasion, like, would be open to some of it, even if they're not actively seeking. You know, not everybody's repulsed. I would say most people are not repulsed. Many people are not repulsed, in my experience. But there are people that are repulsed. There are people who don't like to think. And that's usually where the problems come in. It's like, these things have been going on. It's not new. Drag is not new. Like, the way it's presented in, like, a lot of Western queer culture, with the, you know, queer people of color and different identities kind of blended in, you know, the vernacular, all the, you know, the way they talk and the sass and the kind of like mannerisms and kind of ways they're doing things, comes from a subculture. But other than that part of it, other than like the westernized kind of version of it, I mean, even in Thai culture, there's Kathui, you know, they're revered in the culture. They're not, you know, seen as anything bad. You know, there's plenty of cultures that have been untouched by, you know, the Western gods. You know, the Western idea of gods that came and made everything evil out of control. It was control. I mean, even when you read the Bible, when it comes to things about sexuality and all these types of things, there's a lot of stuff where they're like, where they say, you know, like, this word that they're saying, homosexuality, that term didn't exist back then, you know, like, and the things that they're talking about, they like twist the ideas, you know, where it's like a man shouldn't lay with a man as he does with a woman and all this kind of stuff. It's like, Yeah, it says that, but where did that come from? Look it up. It has nothing to do with queer people, queer culture. It has nothing to do with that. It's not anything similar. Read it for yourself. I'm not even going to tell people what it is. Just do your homework, you know? Like, we've all been brainwashed, you know? And, you know, it's kind of sad to see, but, you know, people have been doing these things since Bible times, since before that, you know? Shakespeare. I mean, Shakespeare freaking men impersonating women, you know? They didn't have females acting back then, and there were men impersonating women. And you can't say Shakespeare's material has nothing adult in it. I mean, there's definitely adult material in Shakespeare, you know? And this was happening like God only knows how long ago, you know? And people don't look at that. They're not like, oh, we can't do Shakespeare. Oh, we can't do Peter Pan. You know, we can't do any of these things, you know, because it's impersonating and there's adult content. It's like, no, that's not what this is, guys. Like, call it like it is. Say what it is. Just be honest. People can't be honest with themselves and with their own ideas, you know. They don't want to say, oh, I'm prejudiced. Oh, I don't understand this. Oh, I'm confused by it. They'd just rather say, nah, don't do it. Let's make a law. You know, let's make a law. And it's like, really? You want to make a law? Are you going to hold Shakespeare to the same standards as drag shows? And if not, why not? Why can't I perform an original Shakespeare, you know, play with all men and some of them impersonating women with the adult content that's originally written in there? Is that illegal in Tennessee? I doubt it. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But drag shows are for minors, or it's illegal in a public space. So I guess if you rent out a private space, but I don't understand. To me, the simple solution would just be just card. If you're gonna throw a drag event, just card, and minors won't show up. Problem solved. If it's really about the minors, they would just card. That's what I feel. If it's truly about the minors, they would card, and then minors wouldn't get into the events, and that would solve your problem. But this isn't about the minors. It's not about the minors. It's about silencing people. It's about silencing queer voices. I mean, let's be real. Like, the majority of entertainers are queer people. You know, a lot of them are queer people. A lot of them are open-minded about queer things. And, you know, they influence. A lot of influencers online are queer people. A lot of creatives are queer people sometimes, not all the time, but it's not uncommon to see drama departments filled with queer people. That's just how it is. So, you tell me, you know, like, I think it's prejudice. Other people would say it's protective against minors. If it's truly protective against minors, why are they not just carding at the door? That would be my question, my $100 million question. I'm gonna melt if I stay in this car any longer, and I need to get back in the house. But yeah, those are my questions. Those are my ideas for how to look at things in a truthful way. If people aren't honest with themselves about their prejudices or what they don't know and not willing to expand their learning, you know, things about gender, it's been going on over 2,000 years. We've had, you know, people in different cultures of different gender, you know, expressions, you know. I mean, what they're called in those cultures, I don't really know. But there are different names in a lot of cultures. But look it up. Look it up for yourselves. Figure it out for yourselves. Find it for yourselves. I mean, these arguments aren't very sound. You know, people quoting the Bible, people quoting the legislation, people quoting, oh, the minors, you know, people quoting stuff about, oh, it's too hard for me to remember which gender to say about this thing or that thing. I'm just kind of like, okay, why is it such a big deal? Like, why does it matter? You know, it's almost the same to me as like race. It's like what difference does it make which box I check for my ethnicity? How does that impact the life of the person in customer service when I check a box? How does that impact the life of my employer when I check a box? How does that impact, you know, anything really relevant at all that makes any sense whatsoever in life? You know, if I go to a post office and I'm checking, you know, certain boxes, or I'm filling out an application, I'm filling certain boxes, it's just another box to check off of how you identify yourself. Like, I don't understand why it has to be such a big deal. It's just whatever. I can say my gender is whatever. Like, why does that matter to anybody else? Like, if I'm not fucking you and I'm not your, maybe, yeah, that's the only reason it would really matter, in my opinion, is in a sexual way. If you're not having sex with somebody, you know, why does it matter? And even then, it doesn't really matter. Trust me, it doesn't matter that much. But I don't know. Everyone has their preferences, but I just don't see. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of debate and controversy, and I think a lot of times it's hard for people to kind of hear what they say with things. It's like, okay, why does this matter? It doesn't matter, you know. People say that it matters. People are concerned about it mattering. People are worried about what's going to happen, you know. Like, I even came from a religious background where, you know, trans people weren't allowed to, you know, be on the stage. You know, they weren't allowed to have any kind of a fake position, mind you. Like, these aren't government roles. These aren't positions that, you know, you get, like, benefits from. It's not a job position. Trans people not being allowed to, you know, be, you know, a song coordinator at a church, or hold an offering plate, or do the prayer meeting. I don't know, guys. Stuff like that is ridiculous to me, but this has gone on way too long with my recording, but I hope this is interesting and helpful to people. I mean, I'm not right in everything that I say. I am open-minded. I'm trying to come from an open-minded perspective, but I'm definitely biased in my perception of what's happening. I don't have kids. I honestly don't know the laws of what is going on in a very detailed way. And, you know, I am a queer person. You know, I do a lot of gender queer looking stuff, and I do a lot of gay things. Like, that's just what I do. That's how I live my life. That's how my life is. And so for me to take myself out of who I am and put myself into somebody's shoes who's worried about these types of things, I don't know what they're worried about. You know, it's just another culture. It's another subculture in America. You just suck it up and learn about it. It's around you. People are moving around you. I mean, I think about all the people from New York and San Francisco and LA and San Diego that are moving to other states that are very conservative states. There's a lot of gay people in these areas, and they're moving to other places that don't have a lot of gay people there. You know, things are changing. People are mixing more. Like, before it was, oh, I have a black neighbor. Oh my God, I have a black neighbor. I have somebody that's dark skinned living next to me in a white neighborhood, and that was a problem. And now I think we all can kind of see how stupid that is. You know, and I think we're going to look back on these types of things and be like, it's just another subculture in America. It's drag, you know, it's queer culture. Like, get over it, you know, get over it. You know, if you let your kids watch MTV and you let your kids watch things on Instagram or YouTube or pretty much music videos in general, I don't see why a drag show is any different. I don't see why a concert by any professional musician that's in the mainstream is any different. They're still going to be rolling on the floor, twerking and licking their lips and all this kind of other stuff. They're still going to be doing all that stuff. They're still going to be dropping F-bombs, you know, screaming on the stage and mother F this and S-word this and B-word that. And, they're going to be saying all this kind of stuff, right? That's not adult content. I mean, I think it is, but if it's straight, that's what people won't complain about. They're complaining because it's queer. They're not complaining because of the minors. Let's get real, guys. If they were complaining because of the minors, they could have fixed this problem a long time ago. Just don't let minors in. They're minors. Tell them to go away. Tell them to leave. Like, they can't, force themselves to stay at an event where security says to leave. Bouncers can kick anybody out of anywhere. It doesn't matter. There's signs all over the place. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason. They can reserve the right to refuse service to minors during drag shows. Can't they? Or are they really that incompetent that they can't have a door guy? That they can't, card. They're really that incompetent that they'd rather make a legal problem out of it. Right? To me, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, like, this is something else. We're calling it one thing, but it's really something else. It's called prejudice. It's called homophobia. That's what it is. So, I don't know. You just gotta be real with it. That's what these laws are. And I have a bad feeling that it's gonna start coming more and more closer to my doorstep. I mean, it's already pretty freaking close, but I'm glad I live in a city where this isn't a current issue. But yeah, if people can get down to San Diego and check out this drag show tonight, it's probably going to be awesome. I wish I could go, but I mean, they're doing the right thing. You gotta support, all around support. It would be cool if they started having live streams. I think drag shows should start having live streams, even if it's for pay. But alright, we're almost 90 minutes in. I didn't mean it to be this long, but I feel like we're long overdue. I haven't recorded for like about a week. So, alrighty guys, thanks for listening.